everyone. It's Lena Banks, certified financial planning professional and small business coach based here in Austin, Texas. Welcome back to your financial therapy for the week. Thanks as always for tuning in. Before we get started, I want to ask you if you've been enjoying the show, please like, subscribe, give us a review wherever you're listening or watching. I'd really appreciate that. So for those of you guys who have listened to the show before, you know that we're all about kind of talking about financial wellness, financial money management, personal money management in hopefully a different and a new way. Our goal here is not to shame people, not to make people feel like they're not handling things well, but it really is to get us talking either to ourselves or to our financial partners or stakeholders about how we manage money so that we can all be more secure, more confident in our financial decision making. And a lot of it, gosh, has to do with emotions. And, finances seem like a very black and white thing. They seem you got to love spreadsheets and all of that to be able to manage them well. That's not really accurate. A lot of times what we fail to do is really check in with ourselves, check in with our emotions around spending so that we can make better choices. And so that's really what this show is all about, getting us to a point where we can become more secure in our financial decision making because we've been conscious about what we're doing. And so the other side of that is just kind of living your financial life really not consciously. And it's really easy to do that, especially if all your bills are getting paid and you're kind of walking through life not necessarily in a bad place, but maybe not in the best place financially that you could be. And if you've questioned any of your financial decision making, then this episode is really for you. So this episode's called 3 Ways You're Sabotaging Your Financial Wellness. 3 ways you're sabotaging your financial wellness. And this, I want to preface these ideas with the fact that we all kind of do these things in our lives. It's really difficult, actually, to stay mindful about how you spend each and every dollar. As a financial planner, one of the things that we coach people into doing is to making a budget. So it eliminates a little bit of that kind of guesswork around how you spend, how you earn, what you're earning for. If you have a financial plan, if you have a budget, it creates those boundaries for you to live your financial life with a little more laissez-faire, and a little less restriction. Because sometimes being overly restrictive about our finances and how we spend or save is just reinforcing beliefs that we also have not really deeply looked into and tried to understand within ourselves. So 3 ways you're sabotaging your financial wellness. I want to be clear that we all can trend into some of these spaces sometimes. The key really is to check yourself, to have instances where you really look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, and challenge yourself to do things a little bit differently so that you can stay in a space of good financial wellness and overall mental well-being. So the first way, you haven't developed the ability to say no. This is really hard, especially for people who are empathetic, who really love the people around them and care about the people around them, including ourselves. It is sometimes really difficult to tell yourself, no, that's not going to be how I'm moving forward. It can be really disappointing to others, but also to yourself. And even if you're telling yourself no, or kind of recognizing, acknowledging your own limitations when it comes to what you can do for other people, not just yourself. When you're used to being in the role of provider or nurturer, it can be really, really difficult to release yourself from financial obligations that are actually dragging you down. And, the one thing that I would say here is that sometimes your inability to say no is actually not even helping the person you're saying yes to, or the thing that you're saying yes to. If that's not an established priority for you, if that's not something that you have thought out and made part of your budget because you know that it should be a priority and you've had like an intellectual conversation with yourself about it, being emotional in the moment and defaulting to yes can be really tough on you emotionally, financially, and frankly, even on the other person, because it doesn't allow them to have those same conversations with themselves either. So what you say no to defines your life and priorities as much as what you say yes to. And so figuring out what you can do without in life, in your financial life, figuring out what you can do without can help you refine your priorities and set clear goals. So budgeting to meet those goals can help you set boundaries. I always say budgets are boundaries. And it can allow you to kind of manage that with the people around you and with yourself. Talk yourself up into the priorities and what you're saying yes to, and that allows you to learn to say no a little more often. Okay, so the next way that you are potentially sabotaging your financial wellness is that you outsource your financial management to your spouse, to your partner, or some automated service like bill pay. You believe that all makes budgeting kind of unnecessary, or going through the process that I just described before of really honing in on your priorities and what you are earning and spending for, the why of that, unnecessary. So if you are kind of set it and forget it type of person with finances, which many, many, many of us are, again, I want to reiterate, we're not trying to shame people here. We are trying to get folks to think differently about how they manage their finances, and hopefully teach folks who have not learned about how to manage their finances a better way that incorporates emotion into the conversation, because it is so much a part of the conversation. So if you outsource your financial management to your spouse or to your partner, or as I said, you set it and forget it, bill pay, you have a financial advisor, none of that is a substitute for going within yourself and figuring out what your priorities are, what your money mindsets are, what your financial beliefs and biases are, and communicating those at least out to the people who need to know them in order to manage your finances. Personal finance is personal, which means that if you're outsourcing the day-to-day of that and you're not checking in on what it is that your finances are doing for you, or how you earning money actually contributes to your financial goals, or, frankly, feeling some of the pain and the kind of the things that we kind of want to deny around our finances. If you're not actively engaged with your finances and kind of letting the emotion of that in, and then working through some of those difficulties, it can be really tough to be financially well overall. So nearly 70% of Americans say financial uncertainty in the last few years has made them feel depressed and anxious. And this is according to a Northwestern Mutual Planning and Progress study from 2025. So the point is, we're all feeling it. 70% of Americans saying that financial uncertainty, not even financial hardship, but just uncertainty, so no clarity around finances, has made them feel depressed and anxious. And if we're all kind of in that same boat of feeling like even the looking at finances or not quite being on stable ground, understanding what you're working for and where that money is going, why you're spending what you're spending, that uncertainty leads to depression and anxiety. Well, that becomes like a bigger life problem than just finances. And so I really want us to understand that we actually can't properly manage our money and our mental wellness without looking at it closely. And so my challenge to you is, even if your spouse does the budget, even if you have a financial advisor and you feel like, you save for retirement, you know what's going on there, take a moment every month, once a month, and you can limit it to a small amount of time. Give yourself literally like 5 or 10 minutes to just think about what your financial goals are, what it looks like for you earning, what it looks like for you spending, what you might want to add to your list of priorities, what you might want to take away. And if you check in on that kind of once a month and get your feelings right around it, it's a better path forward for having less of that depression and anxiety and uncertainty around your finances. And even better, if you are talking to your partner, your financial partner, or other financial stakeholders about it. Because if we're all in the same boat and we all kind of have the same feelings and emotions around financial uncertainty, what better way to kind of solidify a relationship than to talk about some of the things that would make you this anxious, or just feeling down about just life in general. So at least once a month, that's when you have the opportunity to adjust your spending or your savings, or look at how other variables like your fixed income or your earning potential might need to change or shift, or just even how it's making you feel, in order to meet your financial goals or address growing concerns. It leaves you with more clarity, more certainty, and hopefully better mental wellness overall. Okay, so the third way you may be sabotaging your financial wellness is you don't ask or tell the whole truth to your financial stakeholders. And when I use the word stakeholders, I'm talking about not just the people who are directly impacting your finances, and not necessarily your employer, because while they actually provide you dollars, hopefully, if you're not a small business owner or some sort of entrepreneur or in some sort of situation where you have cash flow that is not dependent on an employer, I'm not talking about your employer as your financial stakeholder, because they are not that's not necessarily a negotiation or a situation where you need to be vulnerable with your discussion around personal finance. So want to make that clear. Don't go to your boss or whatever with whatever sob story about your personal finances and think that you're telling them the truth about what you're doing or your situation. But what I do mean is the colleagues that you work with who want to go to happy hour every week, and the kids that you have who need $50 on a regular basis to go do stuff with their friends, your spouse who spends and doesn't tell you what they're spending on, or yourself who might do a similar thing where you splurge and then you might feel guilty about it because you know you haven't built that splurge into your budget. So if you're not asking or telling the truth to your financial stakeholders, the people who have an impact on how you emotionally spend your money, then that can be a real problem. And it can sabotage your financial wellness in the long term. Especially if you grew up in a household where your caregiver's financial struggles and successes were, for the most part, hidden from view, which is actually many of us. So you're in good company. I do these episodes called Origin Stories, and many of the people, they might have seen one or two things that happened as far as financial hardship, but a lot of times we're insulated from the discussions around money, how parents, caregivers are making ends meet. And so that can kind of create a silencing effect for us as we get older, feeling like, well, I can't tell them that. I can't say that. But, sometimes maybe your coworkers need to know, and it's not necessarily that you share with everyone, but, if you have pals at work who enjoy doing X, Y, and Z, if you have friends who socially enjoy hobbies or outlets that may be too expensive for you, it is okay for you to share that and to say, you know what, that's not in my budget. I got other priorities with my finances. And so, I'm going to be over here doing this. And I think a lot of us really have a hard time with things like that. It's really, really difficult to kind of cry uncle and say, I have different priorities than what you're laying out, and I'm not going to spend over here. Now, on the other hand, if going out to happy hour is on your list of priorities, it builds your friendships. It's a bonding experience for you and your friends. Going out to a nice dinner is important for you and your spouse. Those things are great, and they should just be built into your budget because you acknowledge that they are actually priorities within your life, and you want to make sure that you're able to participate in that. So it's not about cutting people off and shutting things down and I have boundaries and all of that. Boundaries aren't meant to be walls. They're meant to be flexible, just like budgets are. And so these things should flex towards your priorities. But you should have some boundaries. You should have thought a little bit about what those are and then be able to tell the truth about them to your financial stakeholders, the people around you who influence you to spend or earn money in certain ways. And so you may not feel comfortable talking about money. Alternatively, if you grew up in a place where, there was true lack in your family, or where there is a lot of abundance and there was lots of discussion of money, that can also stifle your ability to have healthy communication about it because you're kind of traumatized around how money was dealt with in your home. And I think for some people, they might misunderstand when I say traumatized by an abundance of wealth. Well, sometimes that doesn't necessarily teach you the right lessons about how to manage finances, because if you don't continue with that abundance of wealth into your own adulthood, you might have some misperceptions about how your parents or your caregivers actually earned that money, and how they grew it and created that abundance, And so it actually um, the open communication is the key. Whether you had lack, whether you were abundant, whether your parents were kind of just hanging out in the middle class and, doing the best they could, the conversations around money are the important part. And for a lot of people, a lot of us, that was missing growing up. And the practicality of how to earn, spend, make money, and how to tell the truth about it to ourselves and to other people around us, that's the missing piece. And so sometimes it's like, what's the point of talking about something that you either never have or it sits in the background of your life because you always have it? It's almost an afterthought. So that's what I mean by kind of like the trauma of not talking about your finances in your kind of formative years. But figuring out what your beliefs are, what your biases are, what's driving your financial decision making, what truths you've been telling yourself about finances that may need to be re-examined. All of that process and engagement can help you start telling the truth about your finances and about your money to the people that you care most about and that care most about you. And so it's those financial stakeholders that I'm talking about, the people who you really do care about, who have a financial interest, or I'm sorry, just an interest in your life, not necessarily a financial interest, but who influence your financial decisions. And so taking that first step of examining who you are around money is the first step to doing something different, to leaning in, to grow yourself, to be stronger, to make better financial decisions, and to stop sabotaging your financial wellness. So this has been 3 ways you're sabotaging your financial wellness. The first one was you haven't developed the ability to say no, because what you say no to defines your life just as much as what you say yes to. The second thing is you've outsourced your financial management to your spouse, your partner, automated services, a financial advisor, just anyone else other than you. And the problem with that is that you're the only one who knows what your personal priorities are in life and how you want to live your financial life. And so you've got to inform the conversation with some of the work that you're doing with yourself. And the third thing is that you don't ask or tell the whole truth to your financial stakeholders. You don't set the stage and the standard for being honest and open and communicative about what you can and can't do, maybe because you haven't asked yourself. But again, that first step of figuring out what your beliefs and biases are so that you can communicate some of those things to the people that you care most about and that care most about you. That's so important to your financial wellness and well-being overall. So I hope you guys get something from this episode. I will be back next week with another one. Thanks so much, guys.